All right, what's going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode, midweek episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you to everyone out there, as always, for listening and watching, however you consume the show. I appreciate you very much. If you're not subscribed, please go ahead and do that. Actually, right now, today's episode, as always, is brought to you by Sunny Reds, 1531 Abbott Road. Lackawanna, literally just 5 minutes or so away from Highmark Stadium. Incredible food, drinks, vibes, great place to hang out. Big supporter of this show, so please make sure that you go and support Sunny Reds. As always, oh, by the way, you know what? I want to point this out. Thank you to everyone out there. Last week was quite literally, this show is turning 7 years old in just a couple weeks. Last week was quite literally the busiest week we've ever had on Talking Buffalo. I'm sure the Bills Ravens game had something to do with that. Maybe my guest today had a little bit to do with that as well. My guy Matt Warren, SB Nation. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
I'm good. I whatever I can do to help the ratings, Pat. If this beautiful mug on your TV screens here, your phone screens, my soothing dulcet voice, all that stuff.
Nah, seriously, I do appreciate you. Matt's been coming out pretty much all season. We've been doing this midweek episodes, kind of like a tweener episode, I like to call it each week. We spend a little bit of a time, kind of talking about the previous game and starting to look forward to what's on tap for the Bills next. Fortunately, we have an episode where we still have something that is on tap for the Buffalo Bills next, because of course last week the Bills beat the Ravens 27 to 25. It was a stressful game. I was confident all week long. Let's start here, okay? Before we get into Chief stuff, I was strangely confident until Sunday, and then the really started to kick in. We used Joe from Queens during the live show on Sunday night, the post game instant live reaction show. Said that it was a very Billsy game. However, it wasn't the Bills who were Billsy; it was the Baltimore Ravens.
I like that. It's good.
It's like maybe all the pieces really are in place. We've talked about this so many times this year that there's just a different feel, a different vibe. Right now, as we're recording this, as I always like to say, it is Tuesday, late morning for a Wednesday podcast drop. It's shitty outside. I mean, it's really shitty outside. It snowed really bad last night. And I started thinking, man, 24 hours later, and that would have been the weather for the game. And I'm not sure that would have benefited the Bills. The cold absolutely benefited the Bills. Snow, that much snow, not sure that it did. All the things just kind of feel like they're aligning in place right now for the Buffalo Bills, Matt. Before we get into Kansas City, what are a couple of your like lingering thoughts from the Bills game on Sunday? Again, a really close, hard fought victory over Baltimore. You got any like kind of what are your thoughts? What are your like your lingering things right now?
Right. Yeah. I know on this podcast last week, we kind of called it. Like you and I both said, we thought the Bills were going to win.
Mhm.
I don't think either of us would have said that we thought they were going to win that particular way. Running the ball so much, Josh Allen didn't really have a superhero game. He just kind of had a controlled game where he didn't lateral it at the goal line and make a huge mistake. And,
Yeah.
and like that's, I mean, if that's going to be how they win, then they can literally win anyway. They can win with the defense getting excuse me, key stops. They can win with Josh Allen putting on a cape. They can win throwing a bunch. They can win running a bunch. Like it's just kind of like everybody eats. And I haven't really bought into that moniker, but like you see how they can win multiple ways, and it's obviously benefited them.
You go back to the Denver game, and I think the Bills were just a better football team. Denver, very good on defense, but the Bills kind of exposed that a little bit, and they just kind of had their way. This was a lot of people said that Baltimore is the better team, and they might have more front end talent for sure, at the top. But I think 1 through 53, the Bills were every bit as good as the Baltimore Ravens. And so it was an even game. And to me, it came down to the takeaways. It's just
Right.
crazy. I go back, I watch the all 22, I look at the play-by-play on the box score, and I'm like, man, it feels like in a lot of ways, like, how did the Bills win? Like the Ravens didn't punt. The Ravens didn't punt that game. I didn't realize that at the time. They had five
Mhm.
scoring. Well, they had one kneel down or one playing kneel down before the half. So throw that out. Five scoring drives, three turnovers. Like the Bills literally gave up points or they took the ball away. But twice they did hold the Ravens to field goals too, and that does matter. The
Mhm.
Bills were 3 for 3 in the red zone. I think that in the first half. To me, that might be the underrated key of this game. The fact that the Bills had three opportunities to score a touchdown against a talented Ravens defense, and they cashed in all three times in the first half.
Yeah, and we've talked about the Bills defense living and dying by turnovers all year. It's why we like I at least why I was a little bit cautious heading into the playoffs because they have shown that they don't necessarily stop teams
Mm,
very much. And I'm sure we're going to talk about this when we talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. You know, the Bills are whatever it is, 29th in third down conversions allowed on defense. Like that's bad. But when you can, win the turnover battle in literally every single game of the season, they didn't, well, they either were tied or won the turnover battle in every game so far this year. And
right.
it's obviously been very helpful for them.
You wait to see, you don't want it to happen, but you're like, when's the shoe going to come off? Like, when are the Bills going to be the team that turns the ball over three times and doesn't get a takeaway? There's only two more potential games left in the season right now for the Bills, and it hasn't happened. It's just wild to me. The game on Saturday. All right, so the Chiefs are playing Houston. I was like, I am not going to allow myself to get any hope whatsoever. I went to my mother-in-law had an 80th birthday party, and we had this very big house. My sister's house is huge, but we had like 35, 40 people stuffed into that
Jeez.
house during the Chiefs Houston game. I was like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna like I'm barely gonna pay attention. But they reeled me in. And Houston's front four really did a number on Kansas City, especially in the first half. It's just God, CJ Stroud taking bad sacks and just the inability for whatever reason. They were treating, I said this a couple times already this week. They were treating Travis Kelce like he was Quinton Morris out there. You know what I mean? It was frustrating to watch. How frustrated did you even watch the game on Saturday? How frustrating was it to see the Chiefs win the type of game that the Kansas City Chiefs have just won pretty much now for the last 2 years running? It feels like to me.
It was frustrating. And like, we talk about the inevitability of the Chiefs, right? They're like, it's almost like remember the Titans. It's like Novocaine. It's going to work eventually, like, um, and especially seeing Kelce be the recipient of so many of those things. I know that Arrowhead Pride's already talking about that. That's our Kansas City Chiefs blog
Yeah.
at SB Nation. They're already talking about how like Kelce still has the ability to flip the switch in the playoffs. He might have had a down regular season, but seeing him be the guy that was getting all those catches in front of Taylor Swift was certainly something that was needling me a little bit. My son had a hockey game during the second half, so I watched all the first half and then caught a clip, some of the ending. But yeah, it was frustrating to me just because we knew that that was going to be what the playbook was, and somehow the Texans didn't. And then, of course, I think it does bring in up the question of like, how good really is C.J. Stroud? I know that he had a great rookie season, and I know we talked about this with Josh Allen back in the day. You expect like a linear progression from any player, but especially a quarterback, it's never linear. It's up and down, and they take one step forward, two steps back, and then three steps forward and another step back. So like you can't expect him to be a lot better this season than he was last year, like just by default. Um, but like I still think the jury's still out on both C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young in Carolina, and we've seen how they've had their ups and downs over the first two seasons.
CJ Stroud was terrible in that football game. I'm not going to put it all on him. He was gutsy. He was game. He got hit a
Mhm.
lot. He could have went out of the game, and he stood in there. I'll give him credit for that, but he got dropped 8 times, and I pay attention to that because obviously the Bills are going to be facing the Chiefs this Sunday, and
Mhm.
I'd say at a minimum half those sacks were on the quarterback. Like get rid of the football, man. It was just taking
Yep.
some really bad sacks. I know he lost Diggs. He lost Dell. Dell was a big blow to them too, as well,
Right.
man.
Mhm.
For sure. But yeah, it felt like it turned out to be a winnable game for Houston. And the blueprint from that game that I take away is the same thing. There's no secret. You got to play well up front. Houston's front four is really, really good, man. And they were giving the Kansas City offensive
Mhm.
line And the Kansas City offense fits. I mean, they were in his face a lot. A couple bullshit officiating calls, which we'll get to here in a couple minutes. But look, I was rooting for Houston mainly because why would you not want to play an AFC Championship game in Orchard Park? I mean, the Bills are literally 10-0 this year. It's not so much being afraid of the Chiefs, but as it became obvious that Kansas City was going to win that game, I'm like, all right, bring it on, man. Now, look, this was before the Bills played the Ravens. I wasn't getting overconfident, but if the Bills were to beat the Ravens, this is the way it has to be. This is the team that, they're the bar, and you've dominated them in the regular season. They've gotten your, I don't want to say they've dominated the Bills in the playoffs because, quite frankly, the Bills should have won the last 2 times that they've played in the playoffs, but they got the Bills' number in the playoffs. You want to really exercise all the demons and all the negative narratives about the Bills. This is how you do it, man. You go to Arrowhead and you beat the Kansas City Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl. It's kind of like, don't you feel like this is the way it needs to be?
I do. And it's funny because we're recording today on Tuesday. It's the 18-year anniversary of Peyton Manning, kind of breaking the schneid off, breaking off the schneid and getting past the Patriots.
Oh, really?
And yeah, there was the biggest comeback in AFC Championship game history. They were down, I think it was like 14 or something like that. Maybe it was 17. And Peyton Manning leads them back. Tom Brady got the ball back with a minute left, and the Colts got an interception on defense to seal that game. So it's like, it feels like, like exercising the demons. Like it feels like this could be the time that the Bills do that. And I mean, I think we're going to get into it more, but this Bills team is just built to win so many different ways that I don't know if you can take away one aspect of the Bills as a team like they have been able to do in the past.
I'll say this though, and you're right. I kind of feel like the Chiefs are the same way too. Chiefs win games because of their defense. Chiefs can win a game where Pat Mahomes is very pedestrian because they run the ball enough. They find ways to get in the end zone, and then they shut you down on defense. They got good running backs, lots of factors. How do I get into that? So, look, the Kansas City Chiefs this year, I'm not counting that loss in week 18 against Denver. And they didn't even try to win the game. In games that actually mattered that they tried to win, they're 16-1 this year, including the playoffs now. And that lone loss, of course, was to the Buffalo Bills. The Chiefs have won an NFL record 16 straight one-score games, including the playoffs. 5 of their wins this year have been by 5 points or fewer. And they could have lost a lot of those. They could have lost to Carolina. They could have lost to Denver. They could have lost to Vegas. Some pretty, 2 of those 3 teams pretty crappy. They should have lost to the Bengals. So they're a very beatable team. They are not invincible despite their record. And here's the crazy thing, man. Dude, they have not scored more than 30 points this season. Isn't that wild? Like in your mind, you're fantasizing, man, get this game into the 30s and the Chiefs are not going to beat the Buffalo Bills. How do you go 16-1, including the playoffs, and not even score more than 30 points once, dude? How does that even happen?
I mean, have a really good defense and led by, one of the best defensive players in the NFL. I mean, they win close games, yes, but they're in a lot of those close games because of that defense. And so, like you said, when the offense struggles, the defense can pick them up. Whether it's creating turnovers, whether it's just getting third down stops, like they can just do a lot with that defense.
I'll tell you what, too. I saw Sal Capaccio put up a tweet. It actually showed it before we started recording that I didn't realize, and it resonated with me. The offense not explosive by any means, and I'll read exactly what Sal says here. He says, speaking of controlling the game and limiting opponent opportunities, this is how the Chiefs have won a lot this season. Their rankings in the regular season, plays per drive, first in the entire NFL, 6.7 plays per drive. They're number 1 in the NFL. They're also number 1 in the NFL in time of possession per drive, over 3 minutes per drive. And their percentage of drives ending in turnovers is only 8.3, which is 8th in the NFL. And then he adds, I expect the same strategy against the Buffalo Bills. So do I. Because both teams are thinking along the same lines here. Control the football, don't turn it over, and keep that other, sometimes unworldly quarterback on the sidelines. That's got to be a strategy here for both teams. Now, of course, these teams played earlier this season, Matt, and let's be careful because I don't want to be a hypocrite. Last week we were talking about, how the Ravens smacked the Bills. Who gives a shit? There were a lot of factors in that game, and it could be different this time around. For starters, it's in Buffalo, where the first game was in Baltimore. So I don't want to be a hypocrite here. This game was in Buffalo. This coming Sunday is going to be at Arrowhead. Lots of factors, like with the Bills when they played the Ravens. There was we talked about no Bernard, no Milano, no Teron Johnson, other factors. Well, when the Chiefs came here earlier this season, there was no Hollywood Brown. There was no Isaiah Pacheco. There was no Jalen Watson, who's a really good cornerback. Those guys didn't play against the Bills the first time around either. So, again, I kind of want to keep things in perspective here. But the Bills won that game 30-21. Josh was incredible. He threw for 262, ran for 55, including that incredible run to seal the game. He won AFC Offensive Player of the Week. I spent a little bit of time. I didn't rewatch the whole game. I went through a lot of clips and stuff. Khalil Shakir was really good that game. He had 8 catches for 70 yards. Samuel had 5 for 58 with a touchdown. Mahomes was only okay that game. Buck 96, 3 touchdowns with 2 picks. And Travis Kelce had just 2 catches for 8 yards. The Bills controlled the ball for 34 minutes. Now, we just talked a minute ago. I'll put that stats out about, controlling the ball. The Bills won that battle. And 10 of 10, I'm sorry, their last 2 drives of the game for the Bills, 10 plays, 12 plays, touchdown drives to end the game. What are your remembrances from that game? How much stock do you put in that game? Because you could still have some good takeaways from that first meeting. Just the Bills, it was a good game.
It was a good game. And then we had that MVP moment, or what we thought was the MVP moment at the end, when Josh literally ran through the Chiefs to, score that touchdown to push it to a 2-score game so that the Chiefs could, keep their 1-score win streak intact. And I think that's what's going to happen again this time, is that you need to win this game. The Bills have gone a long way this year, letting the other team beat themselves. And I don't think that the Chiefs are going to do that. And I don't think the Bills are going to do that. So somebody's going to have to go out and win this game. I know that it's not like, super deep analysis that, somebody's going to have to go win the game. But what I mean by that is I just don't think anyone's going to shoot themselves in the foot enough to cost their team the game. And so it's going to come down to a play here or a play there that, somebody goes out and does that. I don't expect another Mark Andrews drop, at the goal line in this game. I just don't see that happening. I don't see a Lamar Jackson fumble in this game against the Chiefs because Patrick Mahomes is too careful for that. So that's what I remember about that first game. The Bills controlling the clock, I do think, is going to be a very big narrative of this game, just like it was in that game. The less that the Chiefs have the ball, the higher variance that their offense has. And so they have to score every time they have the ball, as opposed to getting multiple bites at that apple. And so when you see that the Chiefs offense has kind of been a little bit ho-hum this year, that's the kind of game you want to play. You don't want to give them chances with the ball. You want to make sure that they don't have opportunities to figure it out and score later in the game.
It sounds rudimentary, but what you said, absolutely. You can't expect a team to beat themselves when it's the Chiefs and the Bills. Somebody's going to go out and just win the game, make a couple more plays. You can't count on getting 3 takeaways as that being the determining factor of a game. It could happen. It certainly could happen. Weird things happen on a football field. It doesn't necessarily have to even be ugly interceptions. It could be a perfectly thrown pass that goes off a receiver's hands into a DB. It could be Pacheco or James Cook fumbling the ball at the most inopportune time. Takeaways certainly can play a role in this game, but I don't think you could count on it.
While we're on the topic, the last time the Chiefs turned over the football was against the Buffalo Bills, way back in November. They haven't had a turnover since then.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay.
So, it's been a very long time since the Chiefs turned over the ball. And they were so awful in the beginning of the year. They went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight games with a turnover, and 9 out of the first 10 games they had a turnover. And then they haven't turned it over since they played the Bills in November.
Before we get to a break here, I want to after the break, we're going to talk about some reasons why I think should be a lot of confidence that the Bills can beat the Chiefs, and then I think we're going to go over a couple of reasons why they definitely should have a little bit of pause too. Like, let's not get the Super Bowl rally going quite yet here during the middle of the week. This is the Kansas City Chiefs we're talking about. These teams are
Mhm.
just so familiar with each other since 2020. Now, this is the 8th time that these teams have played each other, and they're 4-4 against each other. Of course, Kansas City's perfect in the playoffs. They're 3-0. The Bills are 4-1 against them in the regular season. They played 3 times in the playoffs. 2020, a little bit lopsided. It was 38-20. The Bills were actually winning at the end of the first quarter, but I never felt like the Bills were the better team that day. Like, it wasn't their time yet. That was my feeling at the time. Of
Mhm.
course, 2021, nobody will ever forget that. The 13 seconds. The Bills lose that 42-36. And then last year, the Bills lose 27-24. Can I rewind? Because I just had a thought about something. I wanted to get your
Sure.
take earlier in the show, and I forgot about this. Mark Andrews is being vilified in the worst way. I get that, man. The drop was huge. Okay. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Tyler Bass. Everybody last year, everybody assumes if
Right.
Mark Andrews catches that ball, that the Ravens win that football game. Let's not forget, Josh Allen had a minute 33 and 2 timeouts and needed a field goal. There's still a really good chance, a fair chance that the Bills win that game anyway. It reminds me a little bit of last year, Tyler Bass missing the field goal, and everybody says, well, the Bills, they acted like the Bills would have won that game if he makes the kick. Pat Mahomes had time in the football. He probably goes down and wins the football game anyway. That's just how good these quarterbacks are. You got to have respect for both of them. Do you feel like, I mean, God, he deserves the criticism, but Mark Andrews is like, uh, I don't even want to say, because he's such a great player. And I know
Right.
most Ravens fans know how great he's been, but I feel for him. I felt for Tyler Bass last year. You can't help but feel for Mark Andrews, right? Rivalry or not, man. Seems like a good dude. That sucks to have all that on your plate thrown at you. It's
Yeah,
not fair.
he's kind of become the scapegoat for the game, and it's interesting because Lamar had 2 turnovers in the first half, and Andrews had his 2 miscues in the second half, and so
Yeah.
he's getting all this shit. Where Lamar is getting away with, his bad fumble. I thought it was a bad fumble, and then that the really weird interception that he threw to a place that, I mean, if you're going to throw that ball, you have to throw it to where only your guy can get it. So I don't know why Lamar isn't getting the criticism. But yeah, the Andrews fumble, I think, wasn't a great play by him. I think he was trying to do too much, just like Lamar's fumble was him trying to do too much. Dropping it on the goal line, I agree with you. I thought he caught it, and I'm already thinking that the Bills are going to go down and score because they got 90 seconds left. This is the exact conversation that Good Morning Football had, like on Friday. It was like 90 seconds left. Um, who's which quarterback would you trust to go lead the game-winning drive? And Max Crosby's on there guesting on Friday morning. He's like, "Oh, it's Josh Allen. He's got the clutch sheet." And I'm like, It was. There was no doubt in my mind the Bills were going to win that game in regulation.
There's a sadistic little part of me that kind of wish Andrews would have caught that football, even risking what could have happened just for Josh to take him down the field and this, he's not really an MVP narrative. Because you and I both have said, and I still feel this way, Josh Allen deserves to win MVP. I no longer think he's going to win it. I still
Right.
would vote for him, and I still think he deserves it. And that would have been the ultimate in the playoffs. You beat Lamar because he makes some mistakes and you come down the field in spectacular fashion and win the game. But anyway, whatever. Fortunately, I guess that's neither here nor there. Back to Bills Chiefs here. I was just thinking that because of Tyler Bass. It
Yeah.
reminded me last year missing the field goal. Anyway, 8 games. Josh and Mahomes. Ultimately, that's what this series is kind of all about. If you take the totality of those 8 games, Josh's numbers are actually better than Mahomes. Josh has had 2,511 total yards, 22 touchdowns, 5 turnovers. Mahomes in 8 games, 2,439 yards, 19 touchdowns, 7 turnovers. And then in the playoffs, you're like, all right, well, whatever. That's the regular season. In the playoffs, their numbers, you want to talk about something that is identical? Check this out. Josh Allen in 3 playoff games against the Chiefs has averaged 343 total yards, 9 total touchdowns, 1 turnover. Pat Mahomes against the Bills in 3 playoff games, 337 yards, 9 touchdowns, 1 turnover. the exact same amount of touchdowns, the exact one turnover, and Josh Allen averages a whopping 6 more total yards per game over the course of 3. These are 2 gunslingers, 2 warriors that their numbers are identical. And, we spent so much time talking about Lamar and Joe Burrow and all these great quarterbacks. Man, they are incredible. But Josh, Pat Mahomes in the playoffs, this is what it's all about, ain't it?
Yeah, and I mean, even I'm not one of those people that buy into this narrative that Chiefs Bills regular season games don't matter as much as the playoff games. Like, obviously they matter, in terms of like Super Bowl wins and appearances and all this other stuff. But I think those guys are getting just as amped up for a regular season game in the middle of November as they are, in this January game. And
Sure.
and so I mean, they're playing elevated. They know it's legacy, blah blah blah, but they also know it's like we're both gunning for the 1 seed in the AFC this year, so it feels like a playoff game when those guys tangle in the regular season too. So the fact that their numbers are just so freaking close to each other is hilarious to me. Though I know that Prime Video or whatever put out the stat where they're in the last 10 games, which predates Allen versus Mahomes, that they're each team is 5-5 and they both scored 251 points. Like, it's just a ridiculous,
Yeah.
like, right down the middle series, and that's what makes it so compelling. And it's also what makes it so frustrating when in the playoffs, like, a stupid little thing like 13 seconds can matter so much for the legacy of one guy versus the legacy of the other guy.
100%. And yeah, the Bills need this W if you care about legacy and things like that and rivalry, because they do need to beat them once in the playoffs. Going to take a quick break, come back on the other side, and we'll go over a couple of reasons why we're confident that that could happen. All right, I am back here with Matt Warren from SB Nation. So, at most, the Bills have 2 football games left. Unfortunately, the Buffalo Sabres still have 36 games left. So, I still have to watch and see and read about that stupid team for another 36 games. Back to the Bills here. I want to talk about some of the reasons why I think fans and you and I should have a lot of confidence in the Bills. One of them that I wanted to ask you about, and I want you to elaborate on a little bit, is talk about the maturity and the growth of
Hmm.
Josh Allen. This rivalry's been going on for a handful of years now, and Josh has been that spectacular ESPN highlight reel type football player, but he was also at times a reckless turnover machine. I mean, let's just call it what it
Right.
is.
Mhm.
This season has been different. I mean, it's historical when you add up the sacks, the turnovers, and all that stuff that Josh is not giving up. It's literally historical right now. The growth and the maturity of him taking these checkdowns. You go back, you watch that Baltimore game. There were some plays where he really wanted to throw that football a little more down the field, and those guys were covered and risky, dangerous passes, and he took checkdowns a lot. He's been doing that pretty much all season. He's not turning the football over. Like I said, talk about the maturity and the growth of him, because to me, lots of reasons to have confidence in the Bills, but it starts there. That's my biggest reason.
Yeah, I think he only had 4 passes that went beyond 10 yards past the line of scrimmage in that game against the Baltimore Ravens. That's just a crazy
And
stat when you
it
think
was a
about
little
Allen.
frustrating at the time too, wasn't it? A
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah. Especially in the third quarter and like the early part of the second half. It just felt like they, I don't know, were unwilling to try some of that stuff deeper down the
Mhm.
field. None more frustrating than the tight end screen to Dawson Knox. I mean, on third down and whatever 5 or 7.
Quick side note on that too. I uh I kind of blamed. I was piling on Joe Brady, and apparently several people pointed this out to me, and it
It
was
was a
true.
check. Yeah.
It was a check down. It was a Josh Allen audible to Dawson Knox. So maybe I should have saved a little bit of venom that I had for Joe Brady in my takeaway episode yesterday, actually
Yeah.
for Josh. But go ahead. Yeah, that was on Josh.
But yeah, so I mean, your broader question about Josh Allen not taking chances and all that other stuff, I think is certainly valid. I I don't bring up his name lightly, but Nick Wright was talking about this in a clip I saw on the internet, and he's like, I got to give Josh Allen a lot of credit. He seems like he's white knuckling through this entire season, not making bad decisions. Like, not doing that pitch on the goal line back to James Cook when he saw him and just holding on to the football. Like, it felt like he really wanted to do it. Like, um, But at the same time, you see him looking deep on some of these plays and then just dumping it off to James Cook or the running back out of the backfield to get the 7 yards instead of going for the 37 yards. And it really does feel like he's making that conscious decision every single time not to put the ball in harm's way. And you got to give him a lot of credit for, a Tiger can change his stripes. Josh Allen is changing his stripes in real time, and we are witnessing it every single week.
You know, that play you brought up where he really wanted to put, I don't think he held back because of maturity. I think he held back because number 40, he did see him on the corner of his eyes and his peripheral, which is crazy because when you watch it on the all 22 from the end zone view, I'm telling you, there was nobody on the left side of the field. Matt Collins was there with a guy like 4 yards in the end zone. If number 40, I don't know his name offhand, but anyway, if Josh Allen gets a clear lane, he is pitching at the Cook. It would have been a touchdown. It 100% would have been a touchdown. It would have been incredible. But yes, look, he's being smart and taking the checkdowns and stuff. But it's not like he hasn't lost his fastball either. He's still got very much a flair for the dramatic. He's just doing it at the right times. And even when he does something crazy, it's just working out. You have to go all the way back to that first Baltimore matchup where, the Bills tried something really stupid that didn't work to see that much of a kind of a Josh Allen mistake. Well, I guess maybe you could say the Houston game as well the following week. I mean, he was kind of awful that game, just 9
He was awful, yeah.
Yeah, he was more than awful. He was really awful in that game. But yeah, I feel like the growth and the maturity of Josh Allen, not needing to be a superhero, is really helped this football team and just knowing this team. That's another thing. This is like a divisional game for the Bills at this point. These teams know each other so well. I don't think Andy Reid or Sean McDermott are going to be pulling a lot of surprises out of the hat, either of them. And also the mental confidence. They have lost in the playoffs the last 2 years, but they know that they should have won them both, especially in 2021. I mean, that game was literally over. And then even last year, I feel like the Bills had opportunity, a couple bad drops, things that didn't go their way. How much does that matter to you? How much, just knowing the other team, feeling like there's not going to be anything tricky about it. It's just going out and executing and knowing that you've done it 4 straight years in the regular season and you just know this team and the playoffs the moment's not too big for the Buffalo Bills, right?
Right. But so that on script, what's going to happen. It's the off script stuff that you don't know what's going to happen, whether it's like the ball bouncing one way or, somebody getting a hand on like a Patrick Mahomes like arm as he's throwing it, and then he throws a duck and it gets intercepted or something like that. But then, because both of those quarterbacks can create off scripts, right? They can, whether it's rolling out to get away from pressure, and then finding Travis Kelce sitting in a weird spot that nobody expects him to be. Like that's how both of these quarterbacks operate, and so that's why I keep saying like it's going to have to be somebody going out and winning the game, creating in the in the margins here, not necessarily on script stuff, because they know each other so well and they always have the counter to the counter to the counter for everything that each team throws at them.
I think another big thing that the Bills should be confident in is just their ability to score on anybody. I mean, they scored 30 points on the Chiefs this year already, and I think the Bills only got one takeaway that game as well. They scored, of course, 27 on the Ravens just this past week, 3 takeaways. And they also scored 31 on Denver. And let's not forget, Denver is a damn good defense. And I don't even think the Bills had a takeaway that game either. They just executed on offense like crazy. So I know their ability, Kansas City's defense is like really, really good. It's such an underrated aspect, not talked about enough, how good their defense is. It's why they won the Super Bowl last year. And it's why they're the top seed this year. Mm-hmm. But conversely, I think the Bills' ability to score on literally anybody is just a big factor to give them confidence. They know that they can get to 30, and they don't give a shit who they're playing against.
Yeah, that's right. And, you go, obviously the Bills are the only team to score 30 points. Well, in the games that they were actually trying, the Bills are the only team to score 30 points on the Chiefs, because we've already said that the Chiefs didn't score 30 points this year, and that they've won every game except for the one they played against the Bills. So, like, the Bills being able to put 30 on anybody, especially this Chiefs defense, is obviously going to play a part in this. And, whether it's the Chiefs trying something new or adding a wrinkle to try to slow down the Bills, you're going to see something I think that we're not necessarily expecting. Now, you said that they're not going to pull out tricks. Andy Reid and Sean McDermott aren't going to pull out tricks, or Steve Spagnuolo isn't going to pull out tricks, but we might see a wrinkle or two,
Sure.
like we saw from Josh Allen, like we saw from Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich last week, where they changed up their tendencies. They brought more pressure than they normally do. They played more man defense than they
Right.
normally do against Baltimore, just to kind of get Lamar a little bit uncomfortable. And so, not necessarily changing everything about what they do, but adding a wrinkle here or there, I think might be a way to separate the two teams in this game.
Yeah, look, and absolutely. I mean, maybe what I said is a little bit off base. It's not like the Bills are no threat to run trick plays or anything like that they can't see. I'm just talking about the general familiarity that these teams
Yeah.
have with each other, just resembles a divisional rival. There's not a lot that you're
Mhm.
going to see from these teams that you haven't seen before from them. I got two more things here that give me personally a lot of confidence. And number one, this is to me is a really, really big deal. At first, I thought it was silly, but it's not. The Bills live off that underdog vibe, man. They just play better when people, whether it's justified or not, they convince themselves
Mhm.
that everyone thinks they're going to lose, that everyone thinks that they're less than. They've been seeing it all year long, from Josh being the most overrated player in the league to preseason expectations and power rankings before the season came out. I thought the Bills really, in no small part, just this past game, they really rode that being the
Mhm.
underdogs at home. I think they took that personally. That jerk off idiot in Baltimore who called them the city of losers. I mean, they admitted it after the game that they played that message and those quotes and stuff on the board before the game. They use as motivation. And maybe you and I could sit here, or fans could be like, well, that's stupid. That don't, we're not in their locker room. How do you know that? You know what I mean? Only they know that. And if they're saying that that helps motivate them, it does. That underdog vibe thing means a lot. And there's a lot of people out there right now saying, well, first of all, the Chiefs are a slight favorite, but they are still favorite. And there's a lot of people saying, well, the Bills can't beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. Pat Mahomes is inevitable. The Chiefs going to three straight Super Bowls, or winning three straight Super Bowls, I should say, is inevitable. All that stuff. I feel like they are trying to embrace. So do the dogs too. They feel like the Bills are trying to embrace that underdog vibe. And I just think they do that really, really well. This is going to be another case, Matt, where they are the underdogs.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no way to verify this, but apparently one of the Bills players after the game against the Ravens said, "Well, I guess those 9 Pro Bowlers can go play in the Pro Bowl because they're not going to the Super Bowl."
Yeah.
So I thought that was a pretty little telling little quote there. Like, obviously they're aware of the All Pro team. They're aware of the Pro Bowl snubs. They're aware of all of that stuff. Dean Dawkins has talked about that in interviews as well. I think it was right after the Broncos game. And so like they're obviously aware of those slights and being the underdog. It's funny, Andy Reid on Mondays tried to turn that table and said that, oh, I expect the Bills are going to come in here and be favored in the AFC Championship game. Like when he was talking to reporters, that they're not going to be favored against the Chiefs in Arrowhead. What are you kidding, man? But he said it just to get it out there. Like, oh, we're the underdogs at home against the Bills. Like, they're going to be riding that train too.
I think there are a lot of people out there though that do think, and although the Bills don't want to think this because again they want to be the underdogs, I think there's a lot of people out there that think the Bills are the better football team. And here's the last point that I have, and
Mhm.
normally I would blow this off because I hate refereeing conspiracies and all this other bullshit. But look, it is undeniable that officials have impacts in Chiefs games. We've just seen it time and time and time and time again. There's too much smoke for there to be no fire when everybody, even people who don't bitch about that stuff a lot, are complaining about it. And I don't know much about these refs, but Clete Blakeman is the official for this game. And I saw a chart with the Chiefs record against certain officials. Ed
Uh-huh.
Hockley's doing the Philly game. I think the Chiefs are like 10-1 when he does those games. With Clete Blakeman, the Chiefs are only 6-5 in games
Oh,
that he officials. So call it a small thing if you want, and maybe it is, but it seems like the Chiefs don't get a lot of breaks. And man, who knows who the opponents are when he's officiating those games? But they're just 6-5. So, and I looked at a lot of these other refs and what their records were. He's only 6-5. So it kind of gives me a little bit of confidence that, hey, maybe this won't be a completely one-sided game where, Ed Oliver gets called with a bullshit, phantom roughing the passer penalty that keeps a key Chiefs drive alive. So it gives me a little
Well,
bit of hope.
I wouldn't necessarily go that far. I mean, obviously, we saw the Deion Dawkins holding call that wasn't really a holding call in this game, but the game in Baltimore, that referee, I can't remember his name, that crew throws the fewest amount of flags, and Clete Blakeman's throws the most. So I'm just hoping that if we get a bullshit call against that Oliver, to your anecdote here, that it also just comes back the other side. And if they're going to call penalties on the Chiefs, that they'll also call them on the Bills. If he threw 23 flags in the last game that the Bills played with Clete Blakeman as the ref. 7 of those were against the Bills and 16 against the Jets. And obviously we know the Jets were really sloppy this year, but like their crew throws a lot of flags. So I just hope it at least evens out.
Sure. Is there anything confidence wise before I get into a couple things that like give me pause? Is there anything that like I kind of failed to hit on that you're confident about that we haven't discussed with this team?
I mean, if you've watched this Bills team all year, you know why you should be confident. They're not shooting themselves in the foot. They're controlling the game. When they do shoot themselves in the foot, it's usually late in the game with the Sean McDermott mistake. Hopefully, we won't get one of those because they'll be up by 2 scores like they were in the first game against the Chiefs. And so, I just have confidence that they're not going to make that killer mistake. And that's kind of what I'm rolling with my confidence.
There's one other thing too. I just literally thought of it as you were talking to. I'm like, one other thing too. The Bills don't panic when they start shitty. It happened again on Sunday.
Right.
It happened against Denver. Bo Nix, bam, long touchdown pass. Like, man, this could be a game. Baltimore goes down and scores. Like, here we go. The better, superior, physically gifted Baltimore Ravens. They don't panic. So if the Chiefs, shut down the Bills on their first drive and the Chiefs go right down and score, maybe in years past, they'd be like, here we go again. I kind of feel like with this football team that there's just not a lot of panic in them when things don't go the way early, which just shows you that they got a lot of self-confidence in themselves. I wanted to point that out as well. All right, a couple things that give me pause. Just the Chiefs. You're not going to find a more battle-tested team than the Kansas City Chiefs. I just sat here and told you the Bills don't get rattled if shit don't go their way early. I could assure you if things don't go the Chiefs' way early, that they're not going to get rattled at all either. Just being a completely battle-tested team is a big deal, ain't it?
Oh, absolutely. And we talk about it all the time with young teams. And that's why most people were picking against the Commanders this past week, because Jaden Daniels and that whole team, I mean, obviously the head coach has experience, but a lot of folks on that team didn't. And so when Jaden Daniels is able to go out and take that game from the Detroit Lions, like that was a big deal because he's not battle tested in that way. And so, the Bills and the Chiefs both obviously have that. So it's not really an advantage. Whereas maybe it was an advantage against Baltimore and they pressed a little bit. We saw that with Lamar Jackson. We saw that with Mark Andrews. That's what led to those 2 fumbles, and the Bills capitalized on it. We're not going to see that from the Chiefs.
Right. I think it's safe to say that too. Another thing too, and look, I get it. It was deserved. This year was all about Lamar versus Josh for MVP. And when we talked about, people who were in that conversation, it was pretty much Barkley and Joe Burrow. So Burrow, Lamar, Josh. Pat Mahomes, by his standards, compared to those guys too, was kind of a little bit pedestrian this season. But then you look at the playoffs, and he just gets unworldly in the playoffs. 19 playoff games in his career. He's thrown for 5,312 yards, 42 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So that's something you got to deal with. And just their star players step up in the playoffs, period. Travis Kelce, who seems sometimes like he's washed during the regular season. It's like that switches, flips playoff time. He has been incredible in the playoffs historically, too. 23 playoff games, 172 catches, 2,020 yards, and 20 touchdowns. And we all know what Chris Jones is, especially in the playoffs. So their stars always seem to step their game up in the playoffs. You don't agree?
I don't know if that. I mean, obviously they step up in the playoffs, but like, I'm not a big believer in momentum either, right? Like, I don't believe that like necessarily that past experience like necessarily means that they're gonna automatically kick some ass, right? In the game against the Houston Texans, they had less than 200 yards passing. They were outgained by a considerable margin by the Houston Texans. but the Texans just kept making mistakes. And so I don't necessarily know if like we want to say that Patrick Mahomes from the regular season to the postseason is just going to like flip the switch and automatically get a whole lot better because he was 16 of 25 for 177 yards and took 3 sacks against the Texans. Like I don't know if he necessarily showed that last week, so
Sure.
I don't want to just like automatically say that. He has obviously in the past done that, but I think this team is unique where they've been like manufacturing all of that stuff this year, and I know Kelce scored, what was it, 2 touchdowns? One touchdown and had 117 yards, but he was like their entire passing offense in that game. And so like we talked about earlier, I have no idea why the Texans chose not to cover Travis Kelce in that game. But like, if that's us saying that Travis Kelce is stepping up in the playoffs, like just stop Travis Kelce. And that was pretty much their entire offense. So I'm not necessarily in the camp of, well, it's the playoffs, so Mahomes is going to play a heck of a lot better. I don't think he is. I think it's just going to be that's what their offense is this year, and they're going to need some help from their defense in order to put them over the top.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Something that concerns me too, not talked about it much because it hasn't mattered negatively too much, but I think the Bills secondary has been a little bit leaky of late.
Yeah.
Now, you would look and you'd be like, whoa, they had 3 takeaways against Baltimore. They only gave up 7 points against Denver. Now, how leaky could it really be? Well, it could still be leaky. You know, Christian Benford has been incredible during the regular season. I feel like I don't want to say he's been exposed, but he hasn't been elite in the last 2 weeks. Let's just say that. Like, Cortland Sutton had some success against him. He gave up a couple plays on Sunday as well as Bateman. And he also suffered a concussion, and hopefully everything's going to work out for him. That obviously is critical. Rasul Douglas has been pretty good, but he's been susceptible to getting beat. I thought Damar Hamlin, on the whole, had a good game, a really good game. A couple impactful plays. Tell you what, he saved a touchdown on a tackle with Derrick Henry. That's big. He forced that fumble. He had 2 tackles for a loss. Damar Hamlin was a positive factor. He also got lost on that one long pass play where Bateman got behind him. That should have been an interception. He just lost track. You know, he wasn't deep enough and he didn't track the ball well. And then Taylor Rapp, if he could even play again, he also got hurt in this football game. He's kind of got him beat. I mean, he had a nice interception. Don't get me wrong, not a nice one. It was kind of right to him. But anyway, he has that knack, by the way, for being at the right place at the right time. Kind of Jordan Poyer-esque to me, like when there's a play to be made. But he's also got him beat bad over the last couple of weeks, a handful of times. So this secondary is a little bit susceptible. And, you know, we talked about Baltimore. You know, the Bills defense had 3 takeaways. They didn't really have many stops. And you can't count on the Chiefs giving the ball away 3 times. Right. So I'm a little bit concerned about the secondary against Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy and that speed, not to mention DeAndre Hopkins. I know they didn't really do much against Houston, but those are still some serious weapons. And I don't think the Bills secondary has been playing their best football this season. I guess that's what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, and especially if you're talking about Kaiir Elam and Cole Bishop coming in for those 2 injured guys, like it could be a really significant change, not necessarily on the level of, pulling somebody out of an RV to insert into the starting lineup, but it's, it could be a big change.
Yeah. I got 2 more things for you.
Sure.
1, coaching. I mean, Andy Reid is a great coach. Andy Reid is trying to manufacture underdog vibes for the Chiefs right now.
Yes.
I saw a couple of stories that have been coming out on Tuesday that they're the underdogs, which, whatever, let him. I get what he's doing. But anyway, he's a great coach, okay? He always finds a way. And Steve Spagnuolo is just, obviously, he's a fantastic defensive coordinator. I wish this guy would get a head coaching job somewhere else because I am getting really sick of him being in Kansas City. But man, those are really good coaches. Spagnuolo figures out a way, and you feel like if you're the Bills, man, you gotta either stay up in this game or at least be right there, because if you have to become one-dimensional and that running game kind of has to get abandoned because you fall into a hole, Steve Spagnuolo is going to dial up a lot of creative shit and make life hell for Josh Allen, especially because they got a good front 4 as it is, and you throw in the pressure that Spagnuolo could dial up, it could be trouble. Point being is that a little bit of pause because you got to have a lot of respect for the coaching of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, we talk about being battle tested. There's nobody more battle tested than those two guys calling
Mm,
the offensive defense for, the Kansas City Chiefs. And they just don't make mistakes. You have to go out and beat them one on one, 11 on 11. Um, just hoping that they're going to, I don't know, botch an end of game scenario is probably not the right way to go.
I got one more for you here, and I'm interested in your take because this could be wrong to an extent, or maybe it doesn't matter. I guess is what I'm saying. But I watched the game back because we talked about Josh growth and maturity, taking these drop offs or dump offs and stuff like that, not forcing the ball. I'm trying to, as good as I'm capable of, again, and I'm not Joe Marino, I'm not some of these other film guys that are just Anthony Barasca that are just so damn good at what they do. They see things that my eyes don't and won't. But watching it back, it just seems like the Bills receivers don't get open enough. Like they seem like they really truly do struggle to gain adequate or at least consistent separation. Now, I know good coaching from Joe Brady and being unpredictable, mixing things up, play action, things like that can help, generate open guys. The Bills actually seem to prefer systematically beating you, rushing the ball, keeping the ball, play action, not turning the ball over. So I get that. And then maybe like they did against Denver, they can open things up with a couple plays. But for the most part, Josh is not slinging it to receivers. And I feel like on some level, it's because these receivers just ain't open all that
Mm.
much. And the Chiefs secondary ain't no joke. I mean, they're not. McDuffie's great. Jalen Watson's good, and he's back now. Brian Cook's pretty good save. Justin Reed. There's some good secondary
Yep.
players here for the Chiefs. So that could be something that's a little concerning. Just the Bills' ability to get these one-on-one battles with the receiver and DB and get open.
I mean, yeah, Shakir is the guy that can get open, and that's why he gets so many targets. And none of the other folks can do that on a consistent basis, and that's why they're not getting the targets. Um, we saw that. Like I gave you the stat. I think it was 4 passes that went beyond 10 yards past the line of scrimmage in the game against the Ravens, and I think that's as much a receiver stat as it is a Josh Allen stat.
Do you think the Bills could win a football game where you're only throwing, a couple passes beyond 10 yards? I feel like you kind of need to open it up a little bit more and make the Chiefs have to kind of respect, the long passing game. By the way, is there anything that that I went through and you're like, all right, well, I have reason for pause here, but we really didn't discuss?
The one thing that I am circling, and I've been circling it all season, we've been talking about it, I swear to God, since the Arizona game, week one, the third down efficiency. The Bills
Mm.
defense is 29th in third down conversion percentage, and the Chiefs are second. And that's why they're sustaining drives. You talked about how they have the most plays per drive, the most yards per drive, the most time per drive, or whatever those stats were. It's because they can convert on third downs. They have low yards per play ish, like in the middle of the pack, but they can keep converting on third downs. So they have those long sustained drives. And that is obviously a place where it would scare me if I was the Buffalo Bills defense. I think in the first game it was 50%. I thought I had that pulled up. But so they were still able to convert and continue to extend drives in that first game. And it's how they've been so successful all year without getting a ton of yards. They're just able to keep converting those third downs.
Before we get out of here, I'm going to skip predictions because, I mean, let's keep shit real here. You're not picking against the Bills. I know that. I'm not picking against the Bills. I didn't come this far to pick Kansas City. Well, you know what? Am I speaking for you when I shouldn't be?
What? I'm not going to pick against the Bills. No,
All right. All
I'll
right.
say it
I
right now.
didn't think.
I'll just do 30. I'll do 30-28 because I don't think the Chiefs are going to score 30, and I think the Bills will. So there you go. Like,
All right, all right. So we kind of will gloss over the predictions. I'm not ready to give my prediction. I always do that on the Friday game preview show. But all right, I thought I knew, and I was right that I didn't think it. When you don't come this far, get to that AFC Championship game, and you pick against the Bills. Although I'm sure there will be some people, even in the Buffalo media, who definitely do that. But it's not going to be you and I. But what I do want to close with is I want you to give me a couple of X factors. Obviously, Josh Allen's off the table. Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce. We'll say those three guys. Man, I guess suppose you don't need to keep Kelce off the table. But anyway, give me a couple of your biggest X factors for this game. I got two for each team, but I want you to go first.
Yeah, so X factors are usually like a little bit more unpredictable. We know Josh is going to have a big thing. We know Patrick's
Mhm.
going to have a big thing. I mean, Khalil Shakir is the Bills' X factor. Like he's the straw that stirs the drink. But I'm going to say Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper. And I know a
Mm.
lot of folks were saying that ahead of the Ravens game, but those two guys have combined for 4 catches and 18 yards in the playoffs. Like that sucks. Like we need better from those guys. And so those are my X factors because of that kind of unpredictability that they can create. I don't know if it's going to be one or the other. Ideally, it's both of them, and they're just like taking the Chiefs to task. And then Tyler Bass was the other one that I had. I think for probably obvious reasons, you have to wonder like he's been very good, and so is the fact that he's playing the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game going to get into his head? We'll have to see. For the Chiefs, I had Noah Gray, their second tight end who scored 2 touchdowns in the first game. He's the one that really stuck out to me. And then the last one for the Chiefs is Clete Blakeman, the ref, the guy wearing the white and black stripes. We'll. I know it's a little bit played out as far as like whether the Chiefs are really benefiting that much from the
It's a real
penalties, but
thing, man. It's a real
it
thing.
just seems to happen at key times. Like so that Clete Blakeman is my X factor for the Chiefs.
Look,
There's been four.
with mine, I got two Bills. One of them is one of the guys you said, and I got Amari
Good.
Cooper. And
Yeah.
look, if the Bills are controlling the football game, Amari Cooper ain't going to be a factor. He won't be a factor this week. And if the Bills happen to win, he won't be a factor in the Super Bowl either because he does not factor into this version of the Buffalo Bills offense. Not much anyway. Okay. This is ball control, throw it, quick screens to Shakir, Knox, Kincaid, things like you know what I'm talking about. Curtis Samuel's becoming a little more of a factor as well. And of course, the running game and more design runs for Josh. So this version of the Bills offense, I don't think Amari Cooper is just going to be a factor. But I think the Chiefs are probably sitting there right now. And you go to the second half of this Ravens game, and they kind of sold out a little bit. They committed to stopping the Bills from running the football effectively, just like the Bills did from the beginning with Derrick Henry. And they had a lot of success. I think in the second half of the Denver game, Denver did the same thing. They took James Cook away a lot more. The Bills had a couple big plays, including that big one to Samuel for the touchdown. So I think the Bills are gonna be forced to have some big plays. I think Kansas City's gonna be a lot more committed to slowing down the Bills running game, especially on first and second down. So this could be a game where the Bills got to throw the football more and they got to stretch the field some and they got to use the whole football field. So I think Amari Cooper finally actually will be a legitimate X factor. I don't think the Bills are going to win this game if Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman combine for 1 catch for 5 yards like they did last week against the Baltimore Ravens. So I think Amari Cooper is definitely going to be an X factor. It could easily be Coleman too, though, like you said.
Yeah.
And then my other guy, always going to be my X factor in these type of games, is Ed Oliver. Look, he's not Chris Jones. I'm not saying he needs to be Chris Jones, but he's got to be closer to Chris Jones than Austin Johnson, or the Bills are in a lot of trouble. You know what I mean? He's got to show up. He's got to stand out. He's got to make plays. He's got to be an impactful guy. And he 1000% was against the Ravens. I would go as far as to say that might have been the best playoff game of Ed Oliver's career last week. I thought he was phenomenal. Throw the stats in the garbage. He was winning his battles all day long.
Yeah.
He needs to do that again against an incredible center, which he'll be over at times, Creed Humphrey. So those are my two guys for the Bills. Chiefs, Trent McDuffie, I think, is a big X factor. Kind of move him around a lot, but I bet you he's going to be on Khalil Shakir an awful lot on Sunday. Shakir had 8 catches against the Kansas City the first time they played him. I think you're going to see a lot of McDuffies just straight up in the slot on him, lining up wherever Shakir goes. So that's going to be an X factor. And then the rookie, I think Xavier Worthy is going to be an X factor. Not big numbers, but they've been targeting him a lot. I went and looked it up.
Yep.
So he had 5 catches last week on 6 targets, only 45 yards. But again, 6 targets. He's had at least 5 receptions in the last 6 games that he's played. So he's become a bigger part of this offense than he was earlier in the season. He was kind of a gadgety guy earlier in the season, but he's becoming a little more of a fixture on this offense. And just like I said, the Chiefs, I think, are going to try to take away the Bills' ability to run the football. I think obviously the Bills are going to have a game plan to really kind of limit Travis Kelce. So I think that could open things up for other guys, and he could be one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And uh, you were talking about gadgety stuff. Like they're probably going to still have a handoff or two to Xavier Worthy as well, on
Oh,
top
sure.
of his stuff in the passing game.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, that's going to do it. I'm nervous. It's only in the middle of the week. I'm getting a little bit nervous, but I'm also excited. Win or lose, you'll be back with me next week. And God, I
Mhm.
really hope. I'm just gonna say it. I try not to act like a fan on this show per se, but I really hope we're talking about a Bills Super Bowl. Quick question: if the Bills do beat the Kansas City Chiefs, who would you like to see them play in the Super Bowl?
Oh man, I mean, both those NFC teams are so dangerous. I'll just pick. I mean, watching Jalen Hurts run that like whatever it was 45 something yard touchdown run in last week. I'm like, wow, he's more dangerous than I thought with his legs like in the open field. But I mean, Jaden Daniels, man, the guy's fearless. I probably would rather see the Eagles at this point, which is I know saying something, but it just that X factor of Jaden Daniels is scary to me. Even though I know that the Eagles have Saquon Barkley and AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts and all a very very stout defense. The Eagles are probably the the best complete team left of all four, but
Sure.
just for whatever reason, I don't know why. I don't know why. I'm just going with I'd rather see the Eagles
Maybe
than
it's because
than the
if
Niners.
the Bills played the Eagles in the Super Bowl, I think the Bills would be a small underdog. And again, this whole underdog factor just
Well,
seems to be working out for the Bills. Washington's a lot more of an unknown. I'm going to be honest with you though, I don't think it's really going to be an issue. I think Washington's going to be a little bit game, but I think Philly's going to take that game
yeah,
over on Sunday, and I think they win that going away. So whether it's the Bills in Philly, Kansas City, Philly, God, I don't want to think about Kansas City, Philly. I just can't do it. Anyway, they're potentially all whatever they are. They're good Super Bowls, but regardless, Matt will be on with me next week to talk about whatever happens in this game and looking forward, whether it's a Super Bowl or whether it's starting to get into off-season mode. Follow him on Twitter or Blue Sky at Matt Rich Warren. I'll be back with an episode both tomorrow and Friday. Talk to you guys then.